So I think I have a bit of trains. Okay, maybe a lot of trains. Other than making railroad-related music videos, rail fanning experiences, and other things, I also like to collect trains. Currently, my collection is at a decent size, which I think is ready to show on the channel. So now, I present to you my HO scale locomotive collection. To start the collection showcase off, here is the locomotive that started it all. I got it for Christmas of 2019 and since then became the star of my collection. Eventually though, I would like to get it replaced with another one, maybe from either Broadway Limited or MTH. Here is one you guys may remember. This is the London Northeastern Railway 4472 Flying Scotsman. I got it for my birthday in 21 and still is the only train set I've ever owned in my entire collection. It is also my only Hornby. It has a problem with its rods bending though, but it still runs. It is pretty smooth still and I like it, and hope for it to last a little longer. Although my Bachmann 611 started the entire collection, the first model I actually had was an old Bachmann James, probably one of the earlier ones. I had this one since I was probably 2 or 3 years old. Despite the condition cosmetically, it is still an amazing runner and runs probably just like when it first came out of the box. This will stay with me for the memories and hope for it to stay as long as I live. And finally, we're starting off with the diesels. This is a Bachmann Spectrum GP30 number 2204. I love this thing and it is a very, very good runner. I got it at Edison for an amazing deal of $40 and it is the best running diesel, if not one of the best running diesels of my entire collection. I hope to hang on to this one for a long time because, it's a pretty good model. Next up is maybe my favorite diesel in the entire collection. This is an MTH SD70 Ace, number 4141, and I love this model because of how they were able to incorporate an airplane livery onto a diesel locomotive. This is also very well running. It's a very good runner. It's very quiet, very, very detailed, and yeah. It's also, funny enough, my most modern locomotive in my collection in terms of timeline in real life. And now, alrighty, we start to get into the higher end models. This is a Sunset Models Pennsylvania Railroad K4 in the post-war appearance with a coast-to-coast tender. Currently now, I do not own this model anymore and I sent it to a friend for trade. It was sad to see it go, but it was nice when I had it. It was a pretty good runner, but also had some damage, but it still runs. And nonetheless is a very amazing model. Next up is a pretty iconic model in the HO model railroading community, and you may all know it. Here's Tyco's Chattanooga Choo Choo 080 steam locomotive. I got this in a trade, and it runs pretty well. Not the strongest locomotive, but at least it runs. Sadly though, the Chattanooga lettering on the tender was painted over, but overall still, it's pretty good. And I like it. Here is the most recent model of maybe my entire collection. This is an older Bachmann Jupiter, but it is actually surprisingly a strong locomotive. It is also quite smooth and maybe a little noisy, but I still love the model. I got this at a flea market recently at the Railroad Museum of Long Island in Riverhead for a really good deal of $10. It is also the oldest model in a real-life timeline in my collection. Coming up is a Spectrum Russian Decapod. This is a very good runner and it can pull a decent amount of cars considering it's a Bachmann. I also gave it some white running boards as I felt the locomotive was very plain, being all black with a little bit of gray on the smoke box. I am also still deciding what I should letter this to. Coming up is another diesel. This is a special one to me though, as this is the first ever diesel I've ever had in my collection. It is a Walther's Mainline GP15-1 and it is pretty smooth and also very quiet and very strong. It isn't too detailed though because it's meant to be a beginner's model, but the performance makes up for it. I also got it for about $70 at the Strasburg train shop and still use it. Not that often, but still use it quite a bit. Another Walther's. This is currently the only diesel that I own that is DCC sound. It has some amazing sounds, though I actually never got to hear the horn because I don't have a DCC system to activate it. One thing I hate about it, though, is that it takes literally ages to start up. Maybe spend about like a minute waiting for it to start up before it starts moving. It is also currently the only engine I actually bought out of the United States, which is I bought in Toronto at a hobby shop there for about $280 Canadian. Other than that, though, it's a really good runner, though. Ah, yes, this one. This is the Bachmann Spectrum's newest K4. It has a really good sound decoder, being a DCC sound decoder from Wow Sound, but has a very crap pulling power. From what I've seen, it can pull maximum 6 cars with a lot of slipping. If you don't want slipping, 4 to 5 cars. Eventually, I would like to replace this K4 with the Broadway Limited one. Other than that, though, still like it. Yes, my only running River Rossi. This is another engine I got from Edison, and I love it a lot. It is a very strong engine and pretty accurate to the real-life basis. It's also very detailed for being an old model. It is also very smooth, though maybe a little noisy when running, and is also currently the biggest locomotive in my collection. That's probably gonna be taken by another engine someday, but we'll see. Another favorite model of mine here is the Bachmann Berkshire. This is specifically the one from 2008 with the Mars light. This engine's undecorated, and I'd have eventually like to make it nickel plate road 757, as it was the first nickel plate road Berkshire I've seen in person. It is also very quiet and very smooth. It is DCC installed and is a very good puller, and I hope to keep it for the years to come. And of course, what is a model train collection without the literal classic of the rails? Here is a lifelike Santa Fe F7. It is a pretty loud runner, but it also runs very well. It is an engine I don't really use too often, though. But I still like the engine. It's also a classic. Here are some more F7s. Sometimes I like running these two with the Santa Fe F7s, and they are also very, very quiet. They are Athearn Roundhouse, and I believe I got them for $100 for both of them when I went to Nicholas Smith Trains. I still really like these units, and sometimes like to take photos of them with the Via Rail F40. Here is a modified locomotive. This is an Athearn USRA Light Pacific, with the bell moved and an added feed water heater and also a number board. This is meant to look like a Canadian National or Grand Trunk Western S3A USRA Mikado. This is also a very smooth runner, and I like to sometimes use it for slipping, but it has a problem with the headlight blinking. This may be my favorite model of my entire collection, or at least maybe steam locomotive wise. This is my Proto 2000 USRA 080. It is a very smooth locomotive and also is very, very strong. It is also very quiet, and I like it. It is a very reliable model, and it is very detailed, and this is one of the engines I run quite often with either short freight trains or passenger. And finally, we hit a Broadway Limited model. This is a Broadway Limited QSI M1B. It is a quite a loud engine, but it has some really good sounds and it can pull quite a lot. Sadly though, this has the flaw of having no traction tires and thus has a lot of slipping, especially on slopes. On flat track, it's fine with my freight cars, but when I run it with club cars, it slipped a lot. So I'm thinking about maybe someday replacing it with a P3 or, I don't know, a different lineup with traction tires. But for now, I have this, and I'm happy to have it. The only electric locomotive of my collection, here's the Pennsylvania Railroad GG1. It is number 4890 and is in Tuscan red. This is also based on the preserved one in Green Bay, Wisconsin. This is a Bachmann GG1 and is very reliable, and as well as it's very fast. It has also nearly met the fate of becoming a part engine as it has fallen off the shelf a few times. Luckily, I have catched it every time and runs very well still. I'd also like to get it DCC'd eventually. We now introduce maybe the most inaccurate model of my entire collection. This is a Pennsylvania Railroad Mantua Atlantic. I think it's based on Pennsylvania Road 7002, but this one is made to look like 460. Some inaccuracies being the tender, the valve gear, I think the domes, and other things. It is still, though, a very good runner and pulls well, but again, very inaccurate. Eventually, though, I would like to replace this with a Broadway Limited Pennsylvania Road E6 Atlantic. A very interesting model of my collection. Here is a proto, I'm not sure exactly which, I believe 2000, SW8 by Walthers. It is meant to look like number 8618 at Strasbourg, and I bought it as how it is right now, and I was surprised that this was actually Will Prattis' first SW8 model that he did. It runs well, but slowly has its details coming off, and also, well, is DCC but silent. And also, making a little cameo, is my one and only Strasbourg train car. This one being my smallest diesel of my collection. This is a Bachmann Spectrum 44-tonner diesel. It is a very slow diesel, but it runs pretty well. I got it for a really good deal of $39 once again at Edison. I don't really use it often, but I still love to have it around. Probably someday, though, I'm going to repaint it to become Strasbourg Railroad number 33 or 9331. But yeah, still love it. One of two NNW diesels. This is a Atlas C424 number 423. It runs very well, and I would love to get more Athearn C424 diesel locomotives eventually. Until then, though, this is the only C424 of my collection, and still very reliable. On topic of the Norfolk and Western, here's a SD35 number 1500. This was also my first Norfolk and Western diesel of my collection and is also an Atlas. It is also a very good runner and also can pull a good amount. Same thing for the C424. I hope to hold on to this locomotive just as long as I hold on to the rest. The last locomotive sadly can't run, but is an IHC semi-streamlined Pacific. It does work, but I cannot run it right now as it's a DCC only locomotive and I do not have a DCC system yet and hope to get one soon. It has sound, and it sounds amazing from the sounds I heard. It is also DCC, of course. I hope to soon get a system to run this locomotive on. Now, as we got all the working locomotives out of the way, here are some projects and non-running locomotives. This is my only Italian locomotive, an FSE 423, I believe it is. This was originally my grandpa's who got it for cheap, but it was told it doesn't run. It luckily does run, but sadly, very poorly. Another project locomotive. This is a Rivarossi 060 saddle tank. This locomotive does run, but has a gear project and I need to get that fixed. It does run, but of course, not run now. When it ran though, it was quite fast but a bit rough. Still quite like it and hope to get it fixed soon and get it running. If you also didn't know, the locomotive seen in the first clip is this same locomotive in operation. Here's a Bowser M1B. This is a dummy locomotive and it, as you can see, it's very slowly falling apart. I'm probably going to use it for some parts for my Broadway Limited M1B. Other than that though, there's not much to talk about on this locomotive. Other than that, it's fully die-cast. Previously mentioning about a replacement for the Bachmann 611, this is what I hope for to be that. This is a QSI Broadway Limited J-Class and is also a dummy. I believe this one is supposed to be representing its in-service appearance. I do luckily have some of the wiring and along with its motor and hope to use pickups from something to make this a powered locomotive. First, I would like to get it DC and eventually DCC operating. Here is a Bachmann Spectrum 210-2 Santa Fe type locomotive. This is Seaboard number 2485, as you can see, and it also runs okay actually. Sadly though, this has some kind of problem. I do not know exactly what it is. With this problem, it runs very roughly at low speeds, but looks a little better at high speeds. I also hope to get this gear problem fixed, as this is maybe one of my favorite models of my collection. The last two locomotives of the collection are currently not with me, but are in the process of being modified. These locomotives are a Bachmann Russian Decapod and a Bachmann Mogul. They are currently in the process of being modified to two of Strasbourg's 4 steam locomotives, or, well, more, but the 4 currently operating, number 89 and number 90. These two are nearing completion, and I hope to get them DC seats someday. They are also very good runners. I would also like to thank my friend Blake, or the Otaku Railfan on YouTube, for doing the modifications needed to make these guides accurate. Well, that is the end of the locomotive roster. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy the video. See you guys next time on the next video, and see you later.